What if everything you were ever taught about intelligence is wrong? What if the difference between the people who change the world and the people who watch them do it has nothing to do with IQ, genetics, or the school they attended, and everything to do with a set of mental habits so precise, so deliberate, and so counterintuitive that most people will reject them before they ever try? What if genius is not something you are born with, but something you build? Here is the uncomfortable truth. You have been told your whole life that intelligence is fixed, that some people are simply smarter, sharper, more capable, that the Einsteins and the Da Vincis of the world arrived differently wired, touched by some divine accident of biology. And because you believe that story, you stopped training, you stopped pushing, you accepted a ceiling that was never real, and you built your entire life underneath it. But the ceiling is a lie. And today I am going to prove it to you. Picture a young man named Daniel, 26 years old, working a job that doesn't challenge him, reading the same 3 apps every day, watching his evenings dissolve into passive consumption. Daniel is not stupid. By any conventional measure, he is intelligent. But Daniel has a quiet, devastating belief that lives at the center of everything he does. He believes his mind is already what it is. He believes that the clarity, the creativity, the cognitive sharpness he sometimes catches glimpses of, those are just lucky moments, not something he can cultivate. So he doesn't try. And every year that passes, Daniel becomes slightly less sharp, slightly more reactive, slightly more distant from the version of himself that used to dream with precision. Daniel is not an exception. Daniel is the rule. The neuroscientist Michael Merzenich spent decades studying neuroplasticity, the brain's extraordinary capacity to rewire, reshape, and strengthen itself in response to the demands placed upon it. His conclusion, backed by decades of peer-reviewed research, was simple and revolutionary. The brain is not a fixed organ. It is a living, adaptive system that responds to training the same way a muscle responds to resistance. Use it with intention and it grows. Leave it on autopilot and it atrophies. The question was never whether your brain could change. The question is whether you are giving it any reason to. And then there is Friedrich Nietzsche, who wrote that the secret for harvesting from existence, the greatest fruitfulness and the greatest enjoyment is to live dangerously. He was not speaking only of physical danger. He was speaking of intellectual danger, the danger of questioning your own assumptions, of entering territory where you have no map, of thinking thoughts that make you uncomfortable, because comfort is the enemy of cognitive growth. The brain does not evolve in safety. It evolves at the edge. So what does it mean to train your brain like a genius? What did Leonardo da Vinci actually do differently from the people around him? What was the internal architecture of Newton's thinking, of Tesla's imagination, of Dostoevsky's psychological insight? Was it purely accident, or was there a method? There was a method, and I call it the Genius Protocol. The Genius Protocol is not a list of brain games or memory tricks. It is a complete restructuring of how you engage with your own mind. 5 principles that, applied consistently, transform the quality of your thinking at a neurological level. The first principle is what I call productive discomfort. Every time your brain encounters something genuinely difficult, a problem it cannot immediately solve, a concept it cannot immediately grasp, an argument it cannot immediately counter, it has a choice: retreat into the familiar or lean into the friction. Most people retreat. They reach for the easier thought, the familiar answer, the comfortable conclusion. But the genius mind does the opposite. It sits in the discomfort. It tolerates the ambiguity. It understands that the feeling of confusion is not a signal to stop. It is a signal that growth is happening. The myelin sheaths around your neural pathways literally thicken in response to effortful thinking. The discomfort you feel when you struggle with something hard is the physical sensation of your brain becoming more capable. You have been running from the very feeling that would have made you extraordinary. The second principle is cross-domain. Thinking. Leonardo da Vinci did not separate art from science, anatomy from engineering, music from mathematics. He understood, centuries before neuroscience confirmed it, that the most powerful ideas are born at the intersection of disciplines. When you force your brain to find connections between seemingly unrelated fields, you activate a form of cognitive synthesis that routine single-domain thinking never reaches. Read outside your expertise. Study something that intimidates you. Ask yourself how the principles of chess apply to your business, how the physics of water apply to your emotional life, how the strategy of ancient warfare applies to your daily decisions. The mind that can move fluidly between domains is a mind that sees solutions invisible to everyone else. The third principle is deep reading. And I do not mean scrolling through articles. I mean the slow, deliberate, marginalia-filled engagement with complex texts that forces your brain to build internal models of other minds. When you read Dostoevsky, you are not just absorbing a story. You are inhabiting the psychological architecture of a man who understood human darkness and human beauty with a precision that most therapists never reach. When you read Aurelius, you're not just reading philosophy. You are rehearsing a way of thinking under pressure. The research is clear. People who read deeply, who read fiction, philosophy, history, and science with genuine engagement, demonstrate measurably superior empathy, pattern recognition, and abstract reasoning. Your reading diet is your cognitive diet, and most people are malnourished. The fourth principle is what neuroscientists call spaced retrieval. But what I want you to understand is the practice of active recall under pressure. Your brain does not strengthen memories or skills through passive review. It strengthens them through the struggle of retrieval. Every time you force your brain to reconstruct something from memory, without notes, without prompts, without the safety net of Google, you are deepening the neural pathway that holds that information. The students who read their notes over and over again learn less than the students who close the book and try to reconstruct everything from memory. The musicians who practice scales slowly and imperfectly remember them better than those who play them fast and fluently with the sheet music in front of them. Struggle is the mechanism, not review, not repetition, struggle. The fifth principle is what I call strategic solitude. And this is the one that modern life makes almost impossible, which is precisely why it is the most important. The brain's default mode network, the neural system that activates when you are not focused on an external task, is where your most important cognitive work happens. It is where memories consolidate, where creative connections form, where insight emerges from the noise of accumulated experience. But the default mode network only activates in genuine stillness, not in the passive distraction of scrolling, not in the background noise of a podcast playing while you drive, in actual, intentional, uncomfortable silence. Newton discovered gravity not in a laboratory but sitting alone under a tree. Archimedes discovered the principle of displacement in a bath. Darwin formulated his theory of evolution during long, solitary walks through the English countryside. The pattern is not coincidence. The great insights of history were born in stillness, because stillness is when the brain is finally allowed to do its most sophisticated work. Now, I want to speak directly to the resistance rising in you right now, because some part of you is saying, this sounds like a lot of work. And you are right, it is a lot of work. Training your brain the way a genius trains it is demanding, uncomfortable, and often lonely. It does not produce immediate results. It does not generate dopamine hits. It does not come with a leaderboard or a notification badge or the social validation of posting your progress. And that is exactly why almost nobody does it. The world is full of people who want the mind of a genius, but are willing only to do the work of someone who wants to be entertained. They want the insights without the reading, the clarity without the silence, the creativity without the productive discomfort. And so they remain exactly where they are, capable of so much more, consuming so much less than they could produce. Watching from the outside, as the rare few who chose the harder path build things that outlast them. The cost of not training your brain is invisible until it isn't. It looks like the promotion that went to someone who thinks more clearly than you. The conversation you couldn't navigate because you lacked the depth to find the right words. The opportunity you saw but couldn't act on because your mind was too reactive, too shallow, too cluttered with noise to formulate a coherent plan. It looks like a life that is fine, perfectly fine, but quietly, persistently haunted by the sense that you were built for more. You were built for more. The human brain contains approximately 86 billion neurons, each capable of forming thousands of connections. The computational power inside your skull is so vast that we still cannot fully map it. You are carrying the most sophisticated instrument ever produced by the known universe, and most people use it to watch other people live. This is the moment where Daniel changes. Not because something external happens to him, not because he finds a shortcut or a hack or a system that makes growth painless. He changes because one day, in a moment of absolute clarity, he understands the trade he has been making. He has been trading depth for stimulation, silence for noise, growth for comfort, and the life he wants, the sharpness, the creativity, the sense of being fully alive inside his own mind, is on the other side of a choice he has been postponing every single day. He starts that night, not with a grand plan, with a book he has been avoiding because it is difficult, with 30 minutes of silence that feels unbearable for the first 10 and extraordinary for the last 20. With one problem he refuses to Google, sitting with the discomfort until something inside him shifts. That is the first session of his genius protocol. What will yours be? If this video reached a part of your mind that has been waiting for permission to take itself seriously, comment the word genius below, not as a claim, as a commitment to the version of you that is capable of far more than you have been willing to demand. And if you want to keep building the mind, the discipline, and the psychological depth of someone the world cannot ignore, subscribe to this channel. This is not a place for motivation. This is a place for transformation. Your brain is not fixed. It never was. The only question is whether you will choose to prove it.